The moment those newly released Epstein files hit the internet, one line exploded across social media within minutes. Buried inside thousands of documents was a strange, almost unbelievable email mentioning Donald Trump blowing Bubba. Nobody knew what it meant, but the wording alone was enough to set the internet on fire. Within hours, hashtags were trending, speculation was spiraling, and people were convinced they had stumbled onto some hidden connection that had been kept quiet for years. And because Bubba has long been used as a nickname for Bill Clinton, the confusion only got louder. Screenshots spread everywhere, each one fueling the idea that the files contained something far more explosive than anyone expected. But this was just the beginning, because the moment people started digging deeper, the story took an even stranger turn. Just as the chaos was reaching its peak, Mark Epstein stepped in and tried to shut the whole thing down. He claimed the internet had it completely wrong. According to him, the Bubba mentioned in that email wasn't Bill Clinton at all, despite the name being famously tied to the former president for decades. Mark insisted it was actually a private individual, someone with no public profile, and the entire message was supposedly nothing more than a joking exchange between two brothers. But his explanation only raised more eyebrows. If it was harmless, why refuse to give any details? Why let the speculation grow unchecked? The statement sounded like an attempt to calm the storm, yet it did the exact opposite. Instead of clearing the air, it added a new layer of mystery, and people wanted answers. The moment Trump's name appeared throughout those files, the political world snapped back into familiar battle lines. Old tensions that had been simmering for years suddenly ignited again. Critics treated the email as fresh ammunition, while supporters insisted it was nothing more than a desperate reach. Both sides immediately began spinning their own version of the story. The White House dismissed the entire leak as meaningless, calling it another attempt to drag Trump into controversies tied to Epstein's past. But even with official statements pushing back, the debate only grew louder. Every mention of Trump in the documents was pulled apart, debated, and turned into new headlines. And just like that, an old rivalry, Clinton, Trump, Epstein, and the long shadow of their overlapping histories was back at the center of national conversation. But Trump wasn't about to sit quietly and let the narrative run wild. Trump reacted the way he always does when the story starts spinning out of his control, by going on the offensive. Within hours, he blasted out a long message on Truth Social, calling the entire situation a hoax and insisting the leaks were nothing more than a political distraction. He claimed his opponents were trying to use the Epstein files to pull attention away from their own problems, especially after the government's chaotic reopening. But he didn't stop there. Trump announced he would push for a full investigation into Epstein's ties with a list of high-profile names: Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, and even major financial institutions. It was a bold move, almost like he was turning the spotlight back on everyone else. Supporters saw it as a power play. Critics saw it as deflection. Either way, it instantly reshaped the conversation, and the deeper people looked into the files, the more questions they began to ask about who really knew what and when. No matter how many times the story fades, the Clinton connection always seems to resurface whenever Epstein's name comes up, and this time was no different. As people combed through the documents, old details from years back started circulating again, like Epstein visiting the White House multiple times during Clinton's presidency, or Clinton taking several flights on Epstein's private jet. Clinton has always insisted he knew nothing about Epstein's darker side, and his team repeatedly pointed to statements made years ago distancing him from everything. Yet one line in the newly released files instantly reignited debate, an email where Epstein claimed Clinton was never on the island. Some saw it as reassurance, others saw it as Epstein trying to protect a powerful friend. None of it answered the bigger questions, and the lack of clarity only pulled people deeper into speculation. And as those old connections resurfaced, the next set of emails added an even more unsettling layer to the picture. Once people dug deeper into the files, the tone of Epstein's private emails made the entire situation feel even more tangled. In one exchange from 2017, he allegedly described Trump as dangerous, a word that instantly grabbed attention but gave no real explanation. Another message hinted at something even stranger, saying the dog that hasn't barked is Trump, as if he expected someone to speak up, but couldn't explain why they hadn't. Then there was the message to biographer Michael Wolff, where Epstein claimed Trump knew about the girls. Nothing about that claim was verified, and both sides immediately argued over what he meant, how he knew, or whether he was simply exaggerating to sound powerful. Each email felt like a half-finished sentence, suggestive enough to spark debate, vague enough to fuel endless theories. And instead of clearing anything up, the documents only made the entire story feel more fragmented, leaving room for every possible interpretation. But before the dust could settle, the White House jumped in with a forceful response that shifted the conversation yet again. The moment those emails started circulating, the White House moved fast to shut the story down. Officials dismissed the entire batch of claims as twisted, misleading, and taken out of context. They argued that the unnamed individual mentioned in Epstein's messages was actually Virginia Giuffre, someone who had publicly said multiple times that Trump never crossed any lines with her and had even been friendly during their brief interactions. The spokesperson pointed out that years ago, Trump had reportedly kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago for being creepy toward female staff, something they framed as proof Trump wanted no part in Epstein's behavior. Their message was clear. These stories were being pushed in bad faith, meant to distract from political wins and shift blame during a tense national moment. But even with the strongest pushback, the momentum couldn't stop. The contradictions, the missing context, and the sheer number of unanswered questions kept people locked in, and the speculation only grew louder as the documents continued to spread online. Even after all the statements, clarifications, and denials, this story refuses to die. Every new detail from the Epstein files seems to spark a fresh wave of speculation. The confusion over who Bubba really is, combined with Trump and Clinton's long histories with Epstein, keeps the conversation alive. Mark Epstein's refusal to explain the email fully only adds fuel to the fire, leaving social media and news outlets to fill in the blanks. And with so many high-profile names and mysterious references, people can't help but dig, debate, and share every snippet they find. It's a perfect storm of politics, secrecy, and scandal, one that guarantees this saga will keep popping up in headlines for weeks to come. Because no matter how much context is offered, the questions remain. Who really knew what, and why weren't the public ever supposed to see it?